Hello, everybody. This is Keon Rose. You're listening to Clutch with Keon Rose. Thank you for joining me today. We've got a lot of sports talk for you. Thank you for listening in all the different ways that you can. You could listen to us on AM 1240, on your radio, your traditional radio, in your car, or wherever. You can listen to us on hotnewstalkradio.com. You can also search for the TuneIn Radio app. It's absolutely free in the Apple Store or the Google Play Store for those with Android devices. You download the TuneIn Radio app, search Hot News Talk Radio, give us a follow, press play, and you'll have Hot News Talk Radio everywhere you go. You can also find us online on Facebook and Twitter if you search Hot News Talk Radio. We'd love to hear from you and interact with you on many of the things that we talk about. And if you have a story that you think we missed, if you agree or disagree with us, we'd love to hear it. There's nothing wrong with a little bit of constructive criticism. Just let us know. Hot News Talk Radio. We do respond. So I have some things that I'd like to talk about today, mostly in the way of how things get mislabeled in sports. I tend to dislike labels anyhow because there's a level of presumption that goes with that once something is labeled, it cannot be labeled anything else. We're seeing a move away from that in the NBA, for instance, where players have labels that matter less and less. Traditionally, your center was the big guy that clogged up all the paint in the middle. You throw the ball into him, and because he was bigger and larger than everybody else, he was the guy that was controlling most of the offense and controlling most of the scoring. You drafted big guys, and you ran the offense through them. Well, we have moved to a more skill-typed league, so the traditional label of center does not matter as much anymore. You've got big guys that clog up the paint in the middle, sure, but you've got big guys that swing out. They can shoot threes. They shoot long shots. Some of them can handle the ball very well. Some of them are incredibly great passers. And you've got guards that aren't necessarily the greatest shooters, or maybe not necessarily the greatest passers. LeBron James is a guy who defines basketball labels. He does everything on the floor. He could play all 5 positions if he wanted to. So labels starting to mean less and less, because once you label LeBron a small forward, you are in a way implying that he cannot do anything else. And that's not true. But we've had this label and we've put it with regards to gambling, right? We haven't had legal gambling in the United States for a very long time. And we technically still don't. Technically. Except that it's back. Now, I'm not a gambling person. I don't gamble. I think that that's just a poor use of your money, a poor use of your time. Some people gamble a little bit for fun, can actually control that urge and keep it small. I'm not sure that I could. I think if I were the kind of guy who would gamble, I go big or I go home. And I'd be going home very often. And by home, I mean back to my mother's house, because I wouldn't be able to afford to live in an apartment any longer. I don't think that gambling is a great idea, but it's back. It's under a different name. It's under a different label. And it's through a loophole in the law. We've actually changed the label of gambling, especially in the way of sports. You can gamble legally if you happen to be in Las Vegas. Gambling already happens. We pretend it doesn't. Nobody talks about it on any of the sports networks, Fox Sports, ESPN. Mr. Judd and I have talked about it a little bit. When it comes down to it, okay, gambling already happens, whether we acknowledge so or not. Gambling, according to the American Gaming Association, is a $93 billion industry. It just happens illegally. If I put some money into a pool with some friends over the Floyd Mayweather fight, maybe not Mayweather versus Berto, because that was a terrible fight, but say Mayweather and Pacquiao. We were all excited about that one. I picked Pacquiao to win. I would have definitely lost my money, but say I put money in there. That's not legal. but it happens, and to the tune of $93 billion, as opposed to the $2 billion that happens legally in Vegas. So betting already happens. But when it comes to what we define as legal betting, that's different. We've mislabeled it. There's these sites that have popped up, and they're making billions of dollars, by the way. DraftKings, FanDuel, Draft Street. You may have seen the ads for some of these sites. They are everywhere. This is $1 billion industry now. And how these sites work, and the reason why they act as non-gambling sites, they have a loophole, which is that it's considered skill-based. It's not illegal because it is considered skill-based. And I cannot stress that enough, that how is that skill-based? The definition of gambling is putting money on an event of uncertain outcome with an expectation or hope of winning a larger reward. So that's gambling. What these sites do is it's like fantasy football. You pick certain players and to make up your team, and as those players perform well, you compete with other people, and it goes, you go up a leaderboard or down a leaderboard depending on your performance. So as such, if you pick well, you'll be rewarded. And what makes it a loophole is you're not, if to be illegal, if I were watching, say, the Cowboys play the Eagles, they played the Cowboys play the Eagles this Sunday, 3:45 here on Hot News Talk Radio. If I were to listen to that game and I see the Cowboys playing the Eagles and I put money on the Eagles to win, then what that does, that's illegal. I can't do that. That's not considered skill-based. But if I were to create a lineup of players, put some money into this site, DraftKings, for the opportunity to play, and I select certain players. I select Tony Romo as my quarterback. I select Demaryius Thomas as my wide receiver. I select DeMarco Murray as my running back. When I do that, that is considered skill-based. The only difference between those two things is that I'm selecting individuals instead of a single team. But that act of selecting individuals makes that skill-based and legally, in the eyes of the law, not gambling. But how isn't it? Again, the outcome of whether or not those players' performance is tenuous. It's an outcome that is unpredictable. I am uncertain of the outcome, that I can choose Tony Romo to be my quarterback, and he could throw 3 interceptions in the fourth quarter, no touchdowns, and be injured and knocked out of the game. And then what ends up happening is I end up losing my money. So the law has been defined so specifically that actually does not qualify as gambling. And I think the only good thing that's really been happening, that's come out of this, the only good thing is that we at least acknowledge that gambling happens. Because before we wouldn't. The betting lines would not be mentioned on ESPN, ESPN2, any of those TV networks. You'd think that those games would have betting lines. For instance, if you were watching a game that is an absolute snoozer, the game is boring, it's a bad game, maybe it's a blowout, happens a lot in college football. You see those scores that are 70-7. But if the team was a 4-touchdown favorite, you might keep watching as a gambler to see if they even cover the spread. That might actually keep you tuned in. So it's in the best interest of these networks. And we're starting to see them acknowledge gambling as something that exists, which I think is a good thing. I think it's a good thing to at least not pretend that nobody gambles ever. That seems ridiculous to me because people do. As I mentioned before, it's $93 billion of illegal gambling that happens in this country. But my next question for this, after we've mislabeled this, DraftKings, FanDuel, Draft Street, we're legally saying these things are not gambling and that it is skill-based, though I do not see how that is any more skill-based than me picking the Eagles to beat the Cowboys this Sunday, which you can catch on at 3:45 in the afternoon here on Hot News Talk Radio. If I pick the Eagles to beat the Cowboys, and I do not see how that is any less or more skill-based than choosing specifically Tony Romo to perform well and picking Kirk Cousins to perform well. I do not see the difference there. And so I have to wonder, how long will this last? Will they allow this to exist? Will the government allow this to exist? And whether or not you believe they even have the power to tell people what they should and shouldn't do with their money, I don't believe so. They've already restricted gambling. So at this point, is it something that they're going to open up to? Are they going to loosen up? If you see people participating in these leagues and they're doing their thing and they're being responsible and they haven't lost their house over it, can you look at that and say, hey, we need to shut this down? Or is the government actually going to allow this to proliferate and maybe open up gambling in other places? They've wanted to open up gambling in New Jersey for a long time. I mean, it's been a topic of debate and they haven't really been able to. You've got Atlantic City, but it's no Vegas. So you want to see these things open up for people with regards to whether or not the government should even be telling you what to do with your money. And how this label sticks by saying that these leagues are not gambling, you have basically opened up Pandora's box. Once you define something, you have done two things. You've named it as a thing, and you have also said that it cannot be any of these other things. So when you have traditional gambling, the traditional gambling, you talk about people going to a horse race and betting on horses. Like that's your traditional idea of gambling. How is that any less skill-based than choosing a bunch of, choosing 11 different players and a defense and saying they're going to perform well on Sunday? Well, it isn't. And it's asinine to think otherwise. It's completely ridiculous. And it's a label that makes no sense, both legally and otherwise. And the debate continues, and you see it in a lot of countries in the world are looking at how the U.S. is going to handle this. It's a pretty important issue for all of them because, as you know, around the world, gambling laws are more or less strict. And the U.S. has been one of those countries that has basically said, this is not something that is moral. This is not something that is good for you. You cannot do it. This is AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio. I'm Keon Rose. This is Clutch with Keon Rose. And we are the home of the NFL every Sunday. We've got a big game coming up this weekend, Cowboys versus Eagles at 3:45 on Sunday. And the Cowboys were on this station on Sunday night in another big game in which they played the Giants. So NFC East division rivalries all over the place. And this is an important game, if not only because they're all in the division. The Eagles already have a loss. The Cowboys have a win. If the Cowboys are able to win this game, They take a huge lead in the division to start the season, and the Eagles are trying not to let that happen, trying to pull them back to earth, basically trying to show that this offense that they have, that Chip Kelly has invented, that he has put together, and this team that he's put together that I think a lot of people have skepticism over, see if this team can actually work. That's going to be this Sunday, right here on AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio. This is Clutch with Keon Rose. We're going to talk about Roger Goodell and whether or not he's fit to be the commissioner here on Clutch. Next.
Compass Media Network's coverage of the NFL. Hi, this is Jerry Recco. Join Kevin Ray, Danny White, myself for all the action.
Hot News Talk 1240.
If it's the NFL, it's right here.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
Hot News Talk 1240.
That smells so good. Smells like a big Italian dinner. But you're going to walk out with two. Buy one hot pizza, get a one for free. Two pizzas. You got the two for the price of one at Raphael's Italian Restaurant and Pizzeria. My favorite Italian restaurant of all the time. Now, I'm living in Hicks, and I go to Raphael's right down the street in Hicks and Pike, right near Highland Plaza. You're in Saudi Daisy? At Raphael's Italian Restaurant and Pizzeria in Saudi Daisy. Just next to Saudi Daisy Church of God. Hey, you're on Signal Mountain? There's a Raphael's Italian Restaurant and a Pizzeria. It's right on the main drag. You're going to love the pasta, the pizza. Buy one hot pizza, get a one for free. Two pizzas. You got the two for the price of one at Raphael's Italian Restaurant and Pizzeria. Tastes so good. Bring the whole family. Come on, Raphael's Italian Restaurant and Pizzeria. Mangia. Salute.
Tired of insurance companies? Tired of doctors that won't spend time with you? Do something different. Leave the sick care model of medicine and come to Dr. Danielle Mitchell, the Chattanooga Sports Institute and Center for Health, where we're interested in long-term health solutions, not the quick fixes. Come see me, Dr. Danielle Mitchell, at the Chattanooga Sports Institute and Center for Health. I'm all about the long-term healthcare solutions and doing what's best. On the web, you can find me at ChattanoogaSportsInstitute.com. That's ChattanoogaSportsInstitute.com. Or call us at 875-1005, 875-1005, or find us on social media, Facebook, Dr. Danielle Mitchell, or the ChattanoogaSportsInstitute.com. Let's go, ya!
Are you tired of working in corporate America, or have you recently lost your job and would like to consider owning your own business? If you are, please call me, as I can help you look at franchises or business opportunities that fit you, the economy that we're in, and the type of businesses that are right in the greater Chattanooga area. After I help my clients find the right opportunity, I also help them find the best way to finance the business, including paying yourself through the startup phase. If you would like to learn more about opportunities that may be right for you, please call me for a free assessment. My name is Bruce Krebs at the Entrepreneur Source. Phone number is 423-875-5621.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Costa, host of the Costa Report every Sunday at 9 a.m. My guest this week is former Commander-in-Chief of the U.S. Central Command, General Anthony Zinni, who'll be here to explain what it will take to stop the ISIS momentum. Don't miss General Anthony Zinni this Sunday at 9 a.m. on the Costa Report, right here on AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
Hot News Talk 1240.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me today. This is Clutch with Keon Rose. I'm Keon Rose. This is the first sports show, local sports show of the day in this area, anywhere, on any station. AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. You can listen to us on the TuneIn Radio app if you search it in the Apple Play Store or on the Google Play Store. Search Hot News Talk Radio, give us a follow, press play, and you can have Hot News Talk Radio wherever you go. You can also listen to Hot News Talk Radio in your car, terrestrially, AM 1240. You can also search us on hotnewstalkradio.com. It'll start playing as the page loads. You don't even have to press a play button. You do not even need to lift a finger. And if you want to interact with us, if you want to talk to us, Hot News Talk Radio on Twitter, You can search us there. Our handle is @HotNewsRadio. My personal Twitter handle is @SportsCloud. I watch sports and tweet usually during games. That's where you can find me the most. So in the evenings most days and Sunday, I watch games, I listen to games, and I'm almost always tweeting something. You can also find us on Facebook. If you search Hot News Talk Radio, we are the first thing that comes up. We'd love to hear from you. We've been talking today a little bit about mislabeling things, and I didn't necessarily want to theme the show, but it just worked out this way. There was an article that came out in the Washington Post this morning about whether or not Roger Goodell, the NFL commissioner, is actually fit to do his job as leader of the NFL. And I think that is a preposterous question. I mean, it's nothing short of ridiculous. Of course he's fit to do his job. What? Because he hasn't pleased every fan? If Roger Goodell displeased every fan, he would still be fit to do his job. And I've been critical of the NFL before. I've been critical of the NFL because I don't think that they care very much about you or I. I don't think they care very much about the average fan. But this was true before Roger Goodell was the commissioner, and it'll be true when some other guy becomes the commissioner. The NFL is about money. They're about the Benjamins. They don't care about us. As a collective, they care because we've got money to spend. But individually, if I were to stop watching football because, say, I don't like the way they handle the concussion issue, the league does not care. They will not bat an eyelash. My singular financial output is not enough to bother them. When you start annoying a collective, that's when they get scared and that's when they get worried. But people aren't going to stop watching football, and people aren't going to stop buying jerseys and hats and tickets. It's not going to happen. So the league really doesn't have anything to worry about, and they're not scared of you, and they're not scared of me. That just is what it is. And Roger Goodell not being popular with the people and not being popular with the media isn't going to change that at all. That he's fit to do his job because he keeps making them money. Is Roger Goodell fit to serve as commissioner? Yes. Yes, he is. And the person who makes that decision are the 32 owners of the NFL. Those are the people that pay his paycheck. Those are the people who he represents in negotiations. When the players' union and the league have a disagreement, Roger Goodell is the face of the league. He is the one who negotiates against the players. That is his job. And you could say, oh, well, it's unfair. How can Roger Goodell be the person to hand down punishments to players if he doesn't represent them? Well, that's the setup that they chose. When the players negotiated with the owners over how to split the revenue, over how to split the power, that was what they agreed upon. The players took the money. And the owners know this. If the owners offered the players an opportunity to make more money, and the players took that instead of the power. So now you can't complain when the commissioner has the power to suspend you for 4 games and you can appeal and he can ignore it. That should have been handled in negotiations in the first place. That should never be an issue now. You need to take that up with your union representative, DeMaurice Smith. You need to take that up with one of your player representatives, Drew Brees. You can't take that up now and talk about how it's unfair that the commissioner can do that. The next time that the collective bargaining agreement is up and you have the opportunity to negotiate, don't negotiate away all your power. That's on you. That's a you problem. I'm not worried about you, nor do I feel any pity. I just don't. Nor do I feel like Roger Goodell is a bad commissioner because of how he chose to handle the various problems that the league came up with, because ultimately my opinion doesn't matter and the owner's opinions matter. Robert Kraft, Daniel Snyder, Bud Adams, John Mara, the owners, those billionaires that cut him his paycheck and that are pleased with the amount of money that he is ultimately making them. They are the ones who decide whether or not he's fit to do his job. And I think that's a mislabeling too, that we fans have this expectation that the commissioner of the league is supposed to have our best interest at heart. And that's not true. He's not elected by us. He's not like a public servant. He's chosen by a group of really rich people who also happen to own football teams. His role is mostly financial in nature. And that was the case when Paul Tagliabue was the owner or was the commissioner of the NFL as well. And if I recall, a lot of people didn't like him either, and he wasn't going anywhere. The owners get together and they'll vote, and they're going to choose to re-up Roger Goodell or not. But they chose to last time, and people had criticisms of him then. People didn't like the way Roger Goodell handled a lot of things. There's a lot of criticisms of Roger Goodell, how he's handled domestic abuse and how he's looked at domestic violence cases. That Roger Goodell looks at problems as something that he can suspend and fine out of the league. All of his solutions to how players behave and how players misbehave are punitive in nature. He's about penalizing. That's what he does. That's what his mind comes up with as the solution to a lot of these problems. Oh, there's a guy that's got a DUI. Let's suspend him for 6 games. Roger Goodell became the commissioner of the NFL back in 2006. And in 2007, April to be specific, he rolled out his player conduct policy and immediately suspended then Tennessee Titan Pac-Man Jones, then Cincinnati Bengal Chris Henry, and then Chicago Bear Tank Johnson. And I remember that nobody had any complaints at that time about Roger Goodell. In fact, it was all praise. They liked the way that he disciplined players for misbehaving off the field. I remember people being a huge fan of that. That was the analysis, that if you disrespect the shield, which is the NFL's logo, you're done. You can go ahead and pack it in. You can appeal. If I suspend you for 8 games, you can appeal, and I might knock it down to 4. But I'm not going to stand here and allow you to make the league look bad. Because, of course, making the league look bad means making the league lose money, ultimately. And because Roger Goodell was ultimately praised early on for how he handled these cases, I don't know how we ended up being surprised that he ultimately got drunk on his power and overstepped his bounds. And now Roger Goodell is looking at things and saying, I can suspend Tom Brady for Deflategate. Do I have any real proof that he did what I'm accusing him of doing? Of course not. But I can suspend him because I am the commissioner. In a lot of ways, Roger Goodell was empowered by the very people who are now telling us he is not fit to be the commissioner of the NFL. Which is crazy and backwards and bizarre. But there is criticism of him, and it's fair criticism, by the way. I'm also critical of Roger Goodell. Domestic abuse and domestic violence are issues with nuance and with more things involved than a suspension. There's more to it a lot of times than meets the eye. And where he was ultimately wrong with that, and where he started to look bad, and where he definitely started to lose supporters, is with the Ray Rice case that he mishandled so badly. He mishandled that case badly. Ray Rice and his wife in Atlantic City, they get drunk, they get into an argument, and Ray Rice is in an elevator, knocks his wife unconscious, or his fiance at the time, now his wife, knocks her unconscious, and Roger Goodell saw the tape. And he suspended Ray Rice for 4 games for knocking his fiancée unconscious. Now, the full tape ultimately got leaked to everyone in the media and leaked to all of the fans, and we could all see it. And when you watched it, the outrage that came back was completely reasonable because Ray Rice is an NFL player. He's not just Ray Rice hitting an NFL player is already bad enough because Ray Rice looked like he could do some damage. But Ray Rice hitting his fiance, who is not an NFL player, looked so much worse. And the way he dragged her off the elevator, that looked bad. There's no way you looked at that and thought, yeah, let's only suspend him for 4 games. And interestingly enough, the suspension for Tom Brady for deflating some footballs, which, by the way, not really giving you a competitive advantage, and B, you had no proof that he did it. No real conclusive evidence that he did it. Also 4 games. So deflating footballs and punching your spouse and significant other in the face, same penalty, apparently. Apparently those things are weighted the same. I don't understand his logic and his rationale behind that. And so when he was criticized for it, he deserved it. He's also been criticized for his negligence when it comes to the way the league has handled concussions, CTE, brain issues, that we understand that these hits that NFL players take, even the non-concussive ones, all of the hits add up over time, cause swelling and scarring of the brain and early loss of memory, early on Alzheimer's. And we're talking about as early as your 40s and 50s. This isn't someone who's 80. These players get out of the league and start showing memory loss as early as their 40s. So it does matter. And the league had all of this information, and the league knew all of this information, and they hid it. They chose not to share it with people. And there's actually a movie coming out starring Will Smith about how they tried to hide it and stifle it. So, I mean, it's something that's, again, a legit criticism of Roger Goodell. Another thing to criticize him about is that Roger Goodell's been a bit of a spin doctor. And by that, I mean, if there's any issue that the league has mishandled or handled poorly, Roger Goodell has this bizarre way of trying to turn the story and twist the story so that it means something else and it looks like something else, and it's never the NFL's fault. And, well, I didn't have the tape of Ray Rice hitting his wife. I didn't have the full tape. And then we look at the delivery times, and the tape made it to the league office. So either you chose not to look at it or you are lying to us. Those are our 2 options. So the criticisms of Roger Goodell, of which there is a bounty, still don't prove to me that he is unfit to be commissioner of the NFL, if not only because his job is not a public job. It's a private job. That's like telling the CEO of a company he's not fit to be the CEO. Well, I mean, if he continues to be employed by whoever's above him, whoever owns the company, if they continue to employ him, I don't honestly see how you can decide that. If he's still making them billions and billions of dollars, which Roger Goodell is doing for the NFL, all the things that you have to be critical about, Roger Goodell is actually making the NFL billions and billions of dollars. Then how is he unfit to do his job? He's doing the job that the people pay him to do. There's nothing wrong with that. This is AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio. This is Clutch with Keon Rose. And we'll be back with more criticizing people next.
Warming up out there through the afternoon with mostly sunny skies, highs 80 to 82 tonight, lows into the mid and upper 50s. For Thursday, another dry day. In fact, looking dry for the next few days, highs lower 80s, more sunshine near 85 Friday. Join us for a great worship experience at Abba's House in Hickson, featuring inspiring messages by Pastor Ron Phillips and activities for all ages. Services start Sunday mornings at 10:30. For more, abbashouse.com. And I'm WDEF News 12 Chief Meteorologist Patrick Orr.
On AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Are you tired of feeling like just another account number to your financial advisor? Try something refreshingly different. Call Edward Jones Financial Advisor Patrick Neal in Hickson at 870-7894. Edward Jones, making sense of investing. Member SIPC.
We've got a table here at Delia's and Saudi Daisy, ready to delight in a plate of authentic Mexican food. Delia's spreads a rich selection: loaded nachos, crazy chicken, homemade tamales, maybe the enchiladas with beef, chicken, pork, quesadillas. Every dish beautifully pictured on the menu to help us decide. Join us for lunch or dinner. We're at Delia's and Saudi Daisy on Dayton Pike near the Thrasher Light. Here's dinner. Delia's uses the freshest ingredients, cooked to perfection. Nachos, homemade. Delia's open every day except the Lord's Day. For lunch and dinner, treat yourself to Delia's genuine Mexican food. In Saudi, call 521-7145. That's 521-7145.
Here you are, working to keep your customers happy and to manage your cash flow. IRS problems are the last thing you need, but here they are, flapping about you like vultures. Get help from Eric Pelton and his team of accountants at E.J. Pelton Company. Audits, letters, proposed return changes, 1099s, penalty threats. Pelton Tax Resolution Services brings peace of mind and helps you keep more of what you've earned. EJPelton.com. Offices on Brainerd Road and in Saudi Daisy, just north of the Bilo. That's EJ Pelton. Call 622-3156. Think ahead, 622-3156. An alternative to insurance for people of Christian interest is Samaritan Ministries, a cost-sharing group whose fellow members contribute to your medical expenses. Hi, David Tulis here, member of Samaritan Ministries. I have no deductibles, no silly in-network rules. I choose my own doctors. I'm a cash payer and get the cash discount with med providers. I'm 100% compensated by Christian families around the nation who send their checks directly with a personal note and pray for me in my medical distress. I have a family membership. I write a $405 check every month to a person in need. Just love it. Learn more about Samaritan Ministries Tuesday, September 29 at 7 p.m. at Brainerd Hills Presbyterian Church on East Brainerd Road. It's a mini conference on the Christian alternative to medical insurance.
Hello, everybody. This is AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. This is Clutch with Keon Rose. I'm Keon Rose, and I'd like to thank you for listening to me today. This is the last segment of the show, and we are going to be poking more fun and people criticizing more. I defended Roger Goodell, and then I ripped him, and I didn't realize that that was the formula for that. But Roger Goodell hasn't done necessarily a great job. But we don't get to be the ones to decide that. We're not his boss. And, you know, having a 1,000-word article on 10,000-word article on whether or not Roger Goodell is fit to be commissioner, he's fit to be commissioner as long as the people who pay him say he's fit to be commissioner. That's all I'm saying. Here on Hot News Talk Radio, you can listen to us on hotnewstalkradio.com. Load up the page, and literally, the station starts playing for you. You don't have to lift a finger after that. Minimize the page, go to another tab, listen to us in the background. That's cool. You can also find us on the TuneIn Radio app, free in the Apple Store or in the Google Play Store. Download it. It is free. Give us a search, Hot News Talk Radio. Press follow and then play, and you will have Hot News Talk Radio wherever you go, free and untethered from your car. But if you are in your car, AM 1240 is the name. Talking is the game. You can also find us on Twitter and Facebook if you search Hot News Talk Radio. We interact. We'd love to hear from you. I talked a little bit about Roger Goodell earlier, and that brings me to ESPN in a lot of ways, because ESPN has a contract with the NFL, and that affects how they do things. ESPN is allegedly a journalistic organization. They report the news. Again, allegedly. They do a lot of times, and they have a lot of really, really good reporters. So I'm not going to sit here and say that, ESPN, nobody there can report, nobody there is good at their job. No, I mean, you got guys that are good. Adam Schefter's amazing. Britt McHenry's been really good. You've got a lot of good reporters at ESPN. But in terms of their programming decisions and the things that they choose to show us, the viewers, I can't help but wonder if you're mislabeled a little bit if you are the worldwide leader in sports and you are hell-bent on not showing me sports. I understand the concentration and the skill that it takes to play a game of poker. Poker is not a sport, and I don't want to see it. I know you got to show something late at night. Reruns of another sport. I would watch old football before I watched poker. Why? What's wrong with showing me the 1978 NBA Finals? At least that is a sport. Poker? It's unbelievable. I mean, the things that ESPN tries to shuttle out to you, and then there are some integrity issues with them also. At least they are integrity issues to me. One is a documentary that they were working on in conjunction with PBS about the NFL's concussion issue. And I was excited about that because you have PBS Frontline, and they do a lot of great investigative journalism and a lot of investigative reporting. And then you have ESPN and their very deep pockets and wallets and expertise in the sports field. I mean, these two networks are about to go and take down a topic that basically nobody was talking about at the time, or we were all aware of it, but we were all trying to ignore it. And they were going to try and bring it to light. I was very excited about that. And then something strange happened. The NFL came in, leaned on ESPN a little bit, and suddenly, 2 weeks before the release of the documentary, ESPN's backed out. They're not talking about concussions anymore. And I wouldn't be suspicious about something like that normally, except the pressure from the NFL. What ways could this possibly affect ESPN? Let me think about it. Well, you've got Monday Night Football, which is one of your big money makers that the NFL allows you to have, and your contract with them there is very fickle. Boy, they could go to another network. They might just go to another network if we make the league look bad. Maybe we shouldn't make the league look bad. And it's just weird. It's just weird because you're supposed to be where we get our news from. It's supposed to be where we get our sports information from, and that concussion issue is easily one of the most important issues in sports of the decade. Because that's something that decides whether or not we think football is too barbaric of a sport to even watch anymore. That's huge. That's huge to be on the front end of a report of a story like that. And they backed out. They got a little pressure from the league and they backed out. I don't have any proof that they got pressured by the league, but just looking at where their interest lies, they are a business and they are about making money. I mean, you just follow it logically. It's about money. And they backed out of it. And they have other things that they do weird things that to me are suspicious and lack a high amount of journalistic integrity. One of ESPN's NBA analysts, Chad Ford, he does his mock draft every year. Basically, they have the NBA draft every year. Players from college and from around the world are selected by NBA teams to see where they will wind up in the association. Right? Nothing hard about that, right? And as always, because we are not satisfied with simply sitting down and watching the thing, we have to predict in what ways the draft is going to go. So a lot of NBA experts, a lot of NBA analysts make mock drafts. I used to make mock drafts on my blog, and I stopped doing it because it is stressful and time consuming to do all of that research. I know for a fact that the young man that the Knicks drafted, Kristaps Porzingis, I'm watching grainy YouTube videos of him to try and find out if he's any good. It's too stressful to do that. I can't do that anymore. I don't have it in me. It's soul-crushing work. I actually do appreciate the people who are able to do that. DraftExpress.com and Walter Football, that they actually do a number of NFL drafts, but they do NBA mock drafts as well. Look, they're fun to read. It keeps you in the loop. You understand and start to learn about these players that you are not able to see or watch. You don't have the time. But man, making a mock draft of your own, soul-crushing work and needlessly time-wasting. Because, of course, your mock draft is almost never correct. And Chad Ford of ESPN found this to be the case. His mock draft was not correct. Not because he's a bad analyst, but because trying to predict where general managers are going to decide their needs are and who they're going to select, and if this person selects this guy, then he's not on the board later like you thought he would be, so now he can't be taken later, so another team takes somebody else. Like, by the time you reach the end of the draft, your mock draft is all messed up. This is actually completely reasonable. But Chad Ford was not satisfied with having a mock draft that made him look bad. So, and I'm going to say this tenuously, he allegedly went back into his mock drafts after they were over and retroactively changed them so that it looked like he knew where guys were going all along. Good example in that draft is a young man that got drafted by the Milwaukee Bucks, and I know you've never heard of him. I didn't hear about him until he got drafted, and then he turned out to be pretty good. He's a Greek guy. He's young, 19 years old. His name is Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Giannis is amazing. But you know what nobody knew about Giannis? That he was amazing. Not at the time. We didn't know he was any good. The Milwaukee Bucks didn't know he was any good. When they drafted him, their idea was, well, he's going to stay overseas. He's not going to want to come over immediately, and we're not going to have to deal with his contract. And then he might be good 3 or 4 years from now, and then we'll bring him over. They draft him. He wants to come over immediately. So they bring him over. And what do you know? He's good. We didn't know that at the time. Nobody knew that at the time. The Bucks didn't know. Chad Ford didn't know. Except that if you look at Chad Ford's old mock drafts, Giannis has mysteriously risen from the lower end of the draft where Chad originally had him to, oh, look, right where the Milwaukee Bucks picked. And someone on Reddit did all of this research, actually went back, took screenshots of Chad Ford's old mock drafts, and showed where it was that they changed. And he's been doing it for years. For years. And Chad Ford said, no, I didn't change my mock drafts. And ESPN didn't discipline or suspend or investigate. Sketchy. That's really sketchy, no? That seems to me to be very suspicious and highly disingenuous journalistically. ESPN will do stuff like that. And it just, to me, it you have to take a step back and say, okay, well, I want to believe that you're reporting the truth. I don't think you're reporting the truth. And then you are reporting the truth. When that does happen, you inundate me with nonsense. Was watching the U.S. Open with my brother a week ago. Serena and Venus were playing, and it was a great tennis match, at least in the first 2 sets, and then Serena turned it on at the end there. But ESPN cut away from the actual game of tennis that was being played on the court to let us know that Kim Kardashian had arrived at the game. That she was there to watch tennis. Who cares? Who cares? ESPN is showing us a Wiz Khalifa concert on SportsCenter. Why? That's not sports. And I don't like Wiz Khalifa, so I am biased, but that's still not sports. If they put my favorite band on there, I would still not like it. That's not sports. That's what the music player on my phone is for. And I saw a video this morning on ESPN.com that made me want to put my fist through a wall. I couldn't even believe my eyes. If you talk about the straw that broke the camel's back, are you ready for this one? ESPN doing a review of Week 1 in the NFL using emojis. You know, the smiley faces and the winky faces on your phone. Does ESPN think that their target audience is 10 to 15-year-old girls? Because I'm not sure anymore. I thought that the target demographic of people watching sports were males ages 20 to 45. What is this? So you have a lack of journalistic integrity. You just throw stories out there and see what sticks on the wall. You show me things that are not sports on a sports network. And apparently you insult my intelligence. But look, tell me who did well in the NFL Week 1. Tell me that you liked the way the Falcons played, or that you liked the way that Marcus Mariota played, and tell me why. Give me the breakdown. That's what I'm watching ESPN for. I think we've severely mislabeled ESPN as the worldwide leader in sports. ESPN is becoming the MTV of sports. Except with that Wiz Khalifa concert and with their copious amounts of 2 Chainz interviews, they actually show more music than MTV. So go figure on that one. This is Clutch with Keon Rose. I'm Keon Rose here on AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. Thank you for listening today and joining me. Join me back here tomorrow at 1 here on Hot News Talk Radio for more sports talk. And tweet at me at SportsCloud. There's some good baseball games on tonight. I will be watching them and paying attention. And I haven't necessarily cleared this with Mr. Judd, but we'll try and do our picks on his show tomorrow here on AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio.
Out there through the afternoon with mostly sunny skies, highs 80 to 82 tonight, lows into the mid and upper 50s. For Thursday, another dry day. In fact, looking dry for the next few days, highs lower 80s, more sunshine near 85 Friday. Join us for a great worship experience at Abba's House in Hickson, featuring inspiring messages by Pastor Ron Phillips and activities for all ages. Services start Sunday mornings at 10:30.